I think we're in a moment where you and I are called to lead. Now, here's the thing about leadership, which I think most people misunderstand, is the assumption that leadership is based on a position and the presumption that leadership requires power. Neither of those are true. What leadership actually requires is influence. And no matter where you sit, whatever your vantage point, no matter how low or high in the mountain bed of opportunities, all of us have influence. How will you influence? That's the question I want to ask you right now. How will you influence? Let's draw some inspiration from sport. I'm a petrol head. Anything that burns petrol, I'm very passionate about. I race cars. I race in the V12 series. I'm very good, if I do say so myself. But the one sport I've never been able to get into is bike racing. A couple of reasons, but the most is I just can't understand how you would go that fast in anything that doesn't have a seatbelt. Makes no sense to me. Many years ago, I was working on my first book, The Magna Carta of Exponentiality. And as part of the book, I got to interview motorbike racing drivers. I interviewed the top 4 in the world at the time: Marc Marquez, Valentino Rossi, Casey Stoner, and Jorge Lorenzo. And I asked each of them a very simple question. What makes you the best? See, you got to think about sports that are formulaic in their construct. That means all of us that compete in the game have exactly the same rules. Think, for instance, about Formula One. The reason it's called Formula One is because all the teams get given a formula. You can't just do what you want. So they tell you the size of car, weight of car, the composite materials you can use to build a car. They even tell you the type of tires your car can ride on. They'll tell you the size of the engine, this thing called a capacity or displacement. Even the technology of the engine, naturally aspirated, turbocharged, or supercharged. The drivers in the cars, they generally get given a median, average weight, average height. So at the beginning of a season, when you see all the cars lined up on the track, recognize something. Everybody has the same inputs. It's the same formula. If this is true, and it is, then explain to me why Lewis Hamilton is arguably the greatest driver of our generation. Explain to me why Michael Schumacher was probably the greatest driver of all time. Explain to me why Senna is the most revered driver ever to grace the track. It's because there are some people where even though the construct and the rules are fixed, their influence is disproportionate. And that's what leadership is. It's about influence. So I ask the doctor, Valentino Rossi. I said to him, you know, this number 46 has become iconic in the game. What makes you the best? Listen to this. He says in the Spanish GP, just as an example, when they reach a corner, he will lift himself off the bike, lean until the bike is at a 60-degree angle, and his entire body weight is on one knee, which is on the floor. With that being the case, he will then put his hand right on the throttle and accelerate even farther. Now, to you and I, that makes no sense. Why would you accelerate as you're taking a corner with the bike at an angle? It sounds unintelligent, to say the least. The reason is actually very simple. See, the law of physics says that if the bike takes the corner at an angle with the least amount of weight on the bike, and you accelerate as you clip the apex of that corner, what happens is you generate G-force in the opposite direction, counter to the weight, and it pulls you back up as you're exiting the corner. If you're wondering what G-force is, if you've ever been in a car and it turns really fast, it's the force that acts on your body to move sideways. Basically, when they reach the corner, that's where they win the race. They go faster in the corners, not slower. It makes sense if you think about it logically. Anyone can go fast in a straight, it's easy. Anyone can go fast in a straight. Anyone can have an opinion when it's comfortable. Anyone can be liked without speaking the truth. Influence is about taking the corners as fast as you can. So you and I are in a corner moment right now. The whole world is resetting itself. We have a virus that's completely demolishing our capital markets, same virus completely demolishing many population systems, and the same virus that's completely demolished tourism and travel around the world. You have a surge of social movements all around the world. The right for people who've existed at the fringes of society for the past 100 years. The LGBTI community is saying, we no longer want to sit on the margins, we want to be considered. Say whatever you will, but that's their statement. Black people are saying, we no longer want to sit at the margins of the justice system, we want to be considered. Where are you? And what are you saying? Influence is in the moment, which is the second thing I want to say. Leadership is about moments. And what makes great leaders is how they rise to the moment of leadership. You see, you can't lead until the moment actually arrives to lead. It's not built into the ether. It's the moment to lead that's important. The challenge with many of us is when that moment arrives, we question, we doubt, we obfuscate. We go, me? No, not me. What about so and so? Why don't they do it? Why don't they say it? Or worse, we make that terrible statement. It beckons often at the back of our heads. It's like a resounding, grazing, nasal chamber. Why me? Why you? Why not you? It's that old Tibetan saying, which was translated into English. If not you, who? If not now, when? The moment of leadership is critical. And what people often misunderstand is the moment of leadership often goes to the people who don't have the position and they don't have the power, but they exercise the influence. Think a bit about a pilot of a plane. Pilots often count as a function of seniority the number of hours they've flown. I'm curious about that. Why would the number of hours you've spent 30,000 feet above the earth be an important measure of competence and give you seniority? Better still, in the world of technology as we have it today, the fourth industrial revolution, robotics and artificial intelligence, and all of these very nice English terms that everybody's talking about, planes have autopilot. So the plane can actually fly itself. Why do pilots still count hours in the air? Well, it's because the hours in the air tell you about how many moments those pilots have had to manage. You see, it doesn't really matter who the pilot of a plane is, for you, the passenger, until you hit turbulence. You ever thought about that? Like, you don't really read the CV of a pilot as you're getting on the plane. You don't ask for their credentials. You take it that if the plane hits turbulence, that pilot is going to know what to do. So the point here is that you don't really care about the competence of the pilot until the moment that competence is tested arrives. Now understand that many pilots can't predetermine that moment. In fact, they will proactively try and fly around the storm. That's part of their training. But storms arrive, weather patterns change, and the moment is seized upon them. And when that moment is seized upon them, the pilot will get on the horn, they'll give a clear instruction, ask everybody to sit down, buckle up, and they will sail or fly through that moment. So yours and my world right now is going through a moment of turbulence. Jobs are being lost ad nauseam. In South Africa, by the way, it's estimated by TransUnion that after this coronavirus crisis, there'll be an additional 1.6 million people unemployed. Now, we work in South Africa over 5 multiplier. What that means is if there are 1.6 million additional people unemployed, each of those people provides food for 5 people. That's 8 million mouths that will go without a meal. That's the moment. And in this moment, the question for you and I as young people in 2020 is about how will we rise to meet this moment head on. We can't sit back. We can't complain. We can't tweet it away. We have to act. We have to get involved. So the question for you is, how are you being involved? What are you doing? How are you influencing? And influence, by the way, is a beautiful thing because all of us can exercise it. Whether it's to the single friend, a person you have, the street in the township that you live in, the church in the community where you serve, or the job and workplace where you have the privilege of plowing your skills. All of us can exercise an influence. Final point about being resilient as a generation. There are some things that you can't wish away. We're in the dead of winter right now. You could go on your knees, close your eyes, and look up to the beautiful South African skies and pray to whichever God you praise, and ask that God that the temperature of the day should change, and it won't, because the season is winter. And life is exactly the same. The seasons are presented as they are. If there must be feast, there will be famine. If there must be prosperity, there will be moments of poverty too. The difference is not which season we go through, but the difference is our consistency as we go through those seasons. And so the final note for you to think about as a young person today is to be consistent in your resilience. Because it's easy to be nice when things are good. It's easy to be liked when you're not speaking the truth. Resilience, leadership, finding the moment, accelerating through those corners, and being the pilot that's able to fly through the storm. All of those require the singularity of truth. So rethink for yourself what you stand for. Reframe for yourself what this moment is about. And restart to yourself the contribution you'll make to society.